Hi, good afternoon. These notes are on histograms, well, frequency tables and histograms, but mainly histograms, and this should be page 130 of your notebook. So we're going to get started at the very top and fill in some definitions just so that we understand what we're about to get started on. So what is a frequency table? All this is a table that shows you how often an item or a number or a range of numbers occurs in a set of data. And then what is a histogram? So a histogram is a graph that shows the frequency of the data from intervals of the same size. So the height of the bar represents the frequency, and frequency just means how often. So how often the values in that interval happen. So right here, hours spent on cell phone daily, taken from a group of people. So 5 hours, 7 hours, 6 hours, and so on. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 people were surveyed, and they gave different amount of hours. So what we're going to do is we're going to create our frequency table over here. So this is our frequency table. And a frequency table, you always make intervals, and notice how the intervals are the same size. So this is numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's 5 numbers right here, and then you have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You have 5 numbers here, and then 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So notice how these have the same amount of data options in each interval. So now we're going to tally them. And so as we go, we just kind of check them off. So 5 can go in here, 7 in here, 6 in here, 8, 9, 5, 13, 2, 1, 6, 5, 14, 10, 5, and 9. And now we're just going to put the numbers right here just so that we can use them easily. So that was 6 people go 1 to 5 hours on their phone. This is 7 people are on their phones 6 to 10 hours a day. And then this is 2 people are on their phones 11 to 15 hours a day. Then from there, this data is now represented in this histogram. So this is the histogram. Just so you know the difference between the two. So you use a frequency table to make a histogram. So a histogram kind of looks like a bar graph. So you do number your y-axis with how many people, and then you number your x-axis with which hours they are. But notice how a bar graph would only be each hour. So it'd be 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, 4 hour. It'd be a bar for every number. Kind of like a line plot. But for this one, for a histogram, they give you frequencies. So this isn't representing just one group of people. This is representing anybody who was hours 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they got grouped together. And this was hours 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and they got grouped together. And then this was hours 11 through 15. So that's how you create a histogram, and that's why a histogram is different than a bar graph, because a histogram shows intervals where a bar graph does not. So how do you create a histogram? So here are 5 easy steps. Step 1, you make your list of data from least to greatest. That is optional because we had our list here and we didn't have to put it in order. We just made our table, but you can if that helps you out. Step 2, decide the intervals. So basically what you want to do is you want to have at least, so this was 3 intervals. You want to have at least 3 intervals and no more than 8 or 9, because once you start going too little or too big, it kind of loses the shape of the data. And how you decide your intervals and how many numbers are in your intervals, you find the range and you divide by how many intervals you want. Step 4, label your axis and title the histogram so that we know what we're talking about. And then step 5, you're going to draw your bar to represent the frequency of each interval. So if we look down here in this picture, it just kind of gives us an idea of what's going on. So our frequency, and this is the number of video games that each person in the class owns. So their intervals are 1 to 3, 4 to 6, 7 to 9, 10 to 12, and 13 to 15. And again, they each have the same amount of numbers in the interval. So it looks like majority of people have 1 to 3 video games, so 11 people. 4 to 6 people, 4 people have 4 to 6 games. 0 people have 7 to 9 games. 3 people have 10 to 12, and 6 people have 13 to 15 video games. When this is graphed, you can see this shape created. So there's a lot of people over here. There's a gap here. So even though there's no people, we're still going to put it on the graph. And then please also notice that these bars are touching, where in a bar graph you don't touch, but in a histogram they do touch next to each other. Okay. So now we're going to go on the inside and we're going to create some histograms and some frequency tables together. So we're going to go ahead and take this data here and we're going to put it into our graph. So what's nice about this sheet is that we were already told what intervals to use here and here. So we know 19, 20, 21. So there's 3 numbers in each interval. So we probably need to go a little lower. And it looks like we need to go to 16. So 16, 17, 18. That gives me 3 numbers. So 16, 17, 18. And then we need to go a little higher. So 25, 26, 27. So 25 to 27. All right. Now what we're going to do is just tally and go through our data. So if you just go through it and tally through it, I've already done it on my copy over here to my left, and I'm just going to kind of do it quickly just to speed up the video. So I found 4 in that one, I found 5 in that group, I found 4 in this group, and then I found 5 in this group. And then from there, now we're going to label the axes. So this would be the ages. This is ages of the Real Madrid team. So this is the ages. And 16 to 18. And then 19 to 21. 22 to 24. And then 25 to 27. And then this is just the number of players in each of those categories. And then we can just title this Real Madrid ages. All right. Then the next thing we need to do is we actually need to number our bars. So this one would count as 1. This would be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and it looks like the highest we really need to go was 5. If you want to keep labeling just to go to the top, you can. And then now we get to do our bars. So our 16 to 18 group, there were only 4 people, so we're going to color in the first 4 bars right here. The next grouping was 19 to 21 years of age, and there were 5 people in that group, so we're going to do 5 bars. This is where the highlighter is really useful because it fills it in pretty nicely. And then you have your age group 22 to 24 years of age, and there were 4 people in that group. And then you had your last group, which was, again, 5 people. So it looks like relatively that the age in the Real Madrid team is pretty standard all the way across. There's not really one group that stands out versus the other. It seems kind of a flat distribution. It's all basically distributed about the same. So some things we also want to talk about with our data is the distribution name. So what are the different types of distribution? The distribution of the data shows the arrangement of the data values. It can be described by its center, its spread, or its overall shape. So some words we'll be talking about or using are clusters, gaps, peaks, outliers, and symmetry. So if we look at this shape, this is a skewed data. So the word skewed means to be different than the other. So where is this data different? The majority looks here, but the skewness is happening here to the right. So this is different. So this would actually be called skew right. And vice versa, if the cluster happened here and there was very little data over here, it'd be skewed left. So wherever the skewness, wherever the unlike data is happening, that's where your direction is. All right, this picture is called a normal distribution. Another word you might hear me say is mound or symmetric, because it makes a mound shape. So mound or symmetric. This is called bimodal, and bi means two, and modal, there's two modes, so two large clusters happening. So that was your bimodal, kind of goes up and then down and then back up. And then you've got a flat distribution. Another word you might hear me say is uniform, where it kind of all looks about the same, and that's what the word uniform is. So when you're on your sports team, the uniform is there to make you all look the same, and the uniform here, it basically all looks the same, which is what this data up here looked like to me. All right. So down here, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the two different pieces of data. So this is the number of push-ups and the number of students, and this one's the test scores, your score from 0 to 100, and the number of students who made what score. So we're going to just kind of fill in some information, and then you're going to do the right side on your own. So this picture kind of looks a little symmetric. It starts off a little low, goes a little high, and then comes back low again. So I'm going to call this one symmetric or mound. The mode is the grouping that happens the most. So your peak, so this is our peak, which is 21 or 20 to 29. So majority of people are doing anywhere from 20 to 29 push-ups. And then any outliers, I don't really see any grouping that's happening that doesn't really fit with the rest of the data. So we're going to say none for this group. Test scores. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of color this in because I want to see this a little better. And it looks like we're going to have to kind of eyeball the numbers anyways because they do look a little off. Okay. So the shape that I'm seeing is a skew left, because remember, wherever the piece that doesn't fit with the rest of the data is happening, so that kind of like the outlier, that's your name that you use. So this would be skewed left. So this one was skew right, this one's skew left. So you could think about it, which way is the tail of the data? It's over here. The tail over here was to the right. This one's to the left, so skew left. All right, the mode is where the peak is happening, and the peak looks like it's happening between test scores 61 to 80%. So 61 to 80% was the mode of the test scores. And are there any outliers? Well, yeah, it looks like there were, I don't know, maybe 5 kids who scored in the range of 1 to 20, but majority of people were definitely above 40, if not in the 60 to 80 range. So outliers, I would say yes. The 1 to 20 range. Okay. All right, so that's it when it comes to histograms. So just a quick recap, a histogram, you use a frequency table to help make a histogram. Here's a frequency table. Your intervals have to have the same amount of numbers in them. Then you do your tally, and then you create your histogram where each of these represents one piece of data. And then your different, you've got gaps, you can have clusters, and then you have your different distributions where there's a skewed right or a skewed left. You've got mound, bimodal, uniform. All right, so what you're going to do now is on the right side of the notes, you're going to go ahead and try on your own. So if you'll pause the video, and then I will put the answer key up in just a moment. All right, so here's the answer key for the right-hand side. So the number of texts sent daily by 6th graders. So here is just some information. I found the tallies and I put them in here. I actually also filled in my intervals to be 9 to 12 because I knew 5, 6, 7, 8, that's 4 pieces of data. So then I need to do 9, 10, 11, 12, 4 pieces. So then when I did my tallies, I got 5, 6, 3, and 6. Then I titled my x-axis with my intervals, and then I titled my y-axis with the number of frequencies, and I titled the top with text sent, and then I filled in my information. And this looks kind of bimodal. So there's one mode, there's two modes, so bimodal. All right, down here, there were 3 things going on. You had your NBA team, your books read, and your countries visited. Again, I titled each one, and then I filled in my information. So please make sure that yours look like so. So this looks uniform. This looks, I'd either call this symmetric or skewed right. This one's definitely skewed right because it starts off really high and then goes really low. All right, and then they asked you for the last 2. They already gave you the pictures and they just wanted you to describe them using the words clusters, gaps, peaks, outliers, symmetry. So I said that this one was symmetrical. It was normal. There were no gaps, and there was a peak at 20 to 29. Clusters, the whole thing was together, so I wouldn't actually consider anything to be a cluster there. Skew right for this one because it's to the right. There were no gaps that I saw. I did see a clustering kind of happening here because very little numbers are happening down here, and there was a peak from 0 to 2.5 minutes for the solar eclipse. All right, so if you have any questions, just put them at the bottom of the video, or if you found any mistakes that I made or you're not sure what's going on, just put them at the bottom of the video. I hope you guys have a great afternoon, and I will talk to you guys later.